and Bhagwan, Shreyansnath, Join the Studies Fund, BHU. Firstly, I'd like to request to the head of the department and chairman of this seminar and speaker to have the seat. Pranam to all of you. I'd like to request the head of the department, chairman of this seminar, and speaker to felicitate Pandit Malavya with garland and lighting the lamp. Now, I'd like to request the head of the department, Professor Ananda Mishra, to felicitate our distinguished speaker, A.K. Sunday, and renowned professor, Professor Mukul Mehta, who is the chairing the session, with garland. To the speaker with garland and shawl. I request to HOD sir to felicitate the chairman with garland. Please, sir, please. Now, I would like to request Dr. Anand Kumar Jain to chant the Mangalacharan.
Please, all of you, fold your hand. Combine. Is सुरासुर मणु सिंधु वंदिदम धोदिघाई कमलम पडमामि वड्डमाणम तिथम धम्मस्कतारम से पुण्यतिथयरे ससव सिद्धे विशुद्ध सब भावे समणेयणान दंसण चरित तव वीरिया रे ते सव्वे समगम समगम पत्तेगमेव पत्तेगम वन्दामि अवट्टन्ते अर्हन्ते मानुषे खित्ते किच्चार्हन्ताळं सिद्धाळं तहणमोगर्हणारम् अज्झावैवगाणं साहुडं चेव सवेसिं ते विशुद्धदंसण णाळपहाळा समं समासेज अवसंपयामि सम्मं जत्तोळिवाण संपत्ति जत्तोळिवाण संपत्ति।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका. Now, I would like to introduce the speaker, A.K. Sander, who is the professor, emeritus professor from the University of Gothenburg, Sweden, who is a distinguished professor. As we know that he has done multiple research from east to west jointly, and he has done multiple field work regarding religion, more specifically about religion. So we have with us today, so we are so glad. And I'd also like to introduce the chairman of this seminar, very well-known Professor Mukul Mehta, Professor of the Department of Philosophy and Religion, BHU, as well as Chairman of Bhagwan, Shreyansnath Jain Studies Fund, BHU, BSJSF, BHU. Now, I would like to request the head of the department, Professor Anand Mishra sir, to provide some introductory notes on this seminar.
Hari Om. Honorable Chairperson, Professor M.R. Mehta ji, Chairman Bhagwan Shreyansnath Jain Studies Fund, BHU, our learned speaker, ex Sender, formerly professor at Gothenburg University, Sweden, convener of the lecture, Dr. Rajiba Lochan Behera, our colleagues, students, and scholars connected to the lecture. I, on behalf of the Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University, welcome you all in this lecture of ex Sender on religious pluralism. a philosophical perspective, which is co-organized by Bhagwan Shreyansnath, Jain Studies Fund, BHU. Friends, this is really a great opportunity for us that we are again with Professor X Sander this week. Professor Sander is a renowned scholar of religious studies. He is not unfamiliar to the department, as I had told you in our previous program when he was presiding the lecture. He has been a regular visitor of the department. We had an MOU with his university when he was heading the department at Gothenburg University, Sweden. I'm really thankful to Professor Sander that he accepted our invitation to deliver his lecture, which is jointly organized by the Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University, and Bhagwan Shreyansnath Jain Studies Fund, BHU. I welcome you in this seminar hall. I also welcome, in fact, I am thankful to Professor M.R. Mehta, who is chairing the lecture today. He has been formerly head of the Department of Philosophy and Religion, BHU, as you know. Presently, he is chairing Bhagwan Shreyansnath Jain Studies Fund, BHU, and with which we are working together. We have been organizing a number of lectures with him and hope in near future we shall have some more new programs. I welcome you, Professor Mehta, in your own department. I extend my warm welcome to Priest Jan, who is present with us, Father Phillips, Professor A.K. Jain ji, again Dr. A.K. Jain from Sanskrit Vidya Dharma Vigyan Sankai. Professor Siddharth Singh is also amongst us. We are really proud of. Professor Geeta Manaktala is amongst the audience. I can see who is present online. In fact, many of the scholars are present online. I welcome you all. I welcome all my colleagues, students, scholars who are present here. I welcome you all. Thank you.
Now, I would like to request the Professor Mukul Mehta to put two key points regarding this seminar because he is the chairman of this Bhagwan Shreyansnath Jain Studies Fund. So just 2 minutes, sir, please. 2 lines.
So, dear friends, actually, I was not prepared to be here at this moment because I thought you will be calling me at the end. But anyway, you have called me. So at the moment, I can simply apprise you all with this newly created Bhagwan Shreyansnath Jain Studies Fund and its activities. So this fund actually was recently created in the month of June with a MOU between Banaras Hindu University and Professor Shagun Jain ji, who was leading a group of donors from abroad. So this fund was created with an objective to promote Jain studies uh, in abroad also. Already those donors have established more than 16 chairs in various universities of USA, Germany, England, and some African countries, but they wanted to have such a fund here in Banaras Hindu University also, because Banaras Hindu University and Department of Banaras Hindu University, Philosophy Department of Banaras Hindu University is well recognized and somewhere it is related, connected with all other universities, international universities as well. So with this objective, that under this program we will have lectures, seminars, research, publications regarding Jain studies, and also with a provision to send students and teachers of this university to abroad, and at the same invite professors and scholars from abroad to this university. So with such objectives, this fund was created, and it's going on. Recently, Dr. Rajiv Lochan ji, he also has taken a project under this fund, that is comparative study of philosophy of language in perspective with Jainism and Heidegger, like that, and some project with biotechnology also has been taken under this fund regarding the impact of ekasana and fasting on the health of human being, because this upvas or fasting has been a prominent vow of Jainism. So like that, we recently organized a seminar also in on Sallekna. Then there was a workshop on Tatvar Sutra. So like that, we are trying to move ahead with this fund. So I welcome you all on behalf of this fund. Professor Ashok Kumar Jain ji, he is member of our fund program. Dr. Anand Kumar Jain ji is sitting here. He is the member secretary of the fund. And today, Professor Pradyumna Shah ji was also supposed to be here, but there is another program going on in SVDV. So he had to deliver a lecture there. So he could not attend this, he informed. So once again, welcome you all to this program. And it's always so kind of Anand ji, our head of the department, that he is so helpful always with everybody. Everybody knows that because of his grace, we are able here to continue so smoothly with this fund. So thank you all for coming here. And Professor Alexander, he has been a visitor of this university from more than 4 decades, 5 decades, I should say now. Because once you visited in 1972, so already 50 years are passed. So for last such long span, he is visiting this university, and this department he has been visiting professor also around 2006-7, if I remember correctly. So we are lucky to have him here. He is a renowned scholar of religion and religious studies. So welcome you, Professor Alexander, and we have requested him to continue with this fund in future also. We have discussed all that. So thank you all for coming here. Thank you.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका सर. Now, again, I welcome to all of you from offline and online to attend this seminar. We have an important and very renowned professor from Sweden, Professor A.K. Sander, having a topic, Religious Pluralism, a Philosophical Perspective. Sir, I welcome you to start the paper.
I want to get my overhead up there. Professors, scholars, students, ladies and gentlemen, in real life or on the net. Thank you for having invited me here. It's going to be always a pleasure to come and talk here. Just waiting to see if I can get my overhead up there. That would be helpful for you more than for me, I think, but let's give it a minute. Okay. It's coming. Sorry? 2 minutes. Okay. I think you wait because I have my first main questions on the first slide. So I think you wait for those. It's going to be easier to follow if you're. Here we go. Here we go. And I just scroll with the mouse.
Now you can continue.
Okay.
Except from here.
Yeah. So now we got the technicalities. Oops. Right. The title is about religious pluralism, a philosophical perspective. And this is a philosophical perspective. You can talk about these topics in very many different ways. And I'm going to talk about it as a sort of from a philosophical point of view today. And you hear me? Okay, that's good. I have some main questions which you start out with. How should we, as religious adherents, conduct ourselves towards those of a different faith? That's the main question. How should we, as Christians or Hindus or Muslims, for example, think about, theoretical and practical, contents of other faiths and conduct ourselves towards those who follows them? And then what are our options in this regard? I should come to the options. Among these, are there any that are preferable, and why are those options preferable that we're going to see? As you understand, this is a huge topic, so I can just scratch it a bit on the surface and try to implement or indicate some ways you can think about it. So everybody has to think about those issues later on for themselves. So I'm not going to provide you with the answer, because there is a lot of different things to consider, as you might think. As a background, you can say that during the last 50 years, the world has become more and more globalized and more plural. And today it's almost impossible to live anywhere and have just a single tradition, a single ideology, a single culture, a single religious tradition to face. All over, we are forced to face other people, other people's ideologies, other people's religions. As Peter Berger once faced it, that the world has gone from fate to choice. Before we were sort of stuck in our world, now we have to choose most ideas about our living, how we should live. And that is what many people call the postmodern conditions, a condition that for many people is hard to bear. Because having to choose a lot of things is tough work, and we have to know how to choose. To have to choose our religion is also tough work. Given this situation, how should we conduct ourselves to other people? What options do we have? And I would say that the options are not so very many if we should have rational options. I should give some of them first. You're going to get some more detail in a short while. And here are some of the options you have. To change my own convictions or the way I hold them, arguing that they are not very important, so I have to tone down or totally disregard the conflict. Convince the others that my convictions and beliefs are better than theirs and that should be preferred, even by them. I try to change their minds. Totally abandon my old system of beliefs and convictions. Strive for harmony and consensus by reinterpreting my own religious beliefs in a way that avoids contradictions and conflict with the others. Or are there any more alternatives that hasn't been mentioned yet? So, as I said, I should not answer these questions. I should just share my thoughts about it and let you think about it. You can say, what does it mean to take a responsible view for one's own religion? The first thing you have to think about is that you have a choice between how should I react to the beliefs and confessions of other people, as well as the ritual and practical. And the second way is how should I react to the adherents themselves? And that's two different things. They can go together, they don't need to go together, and the way they can go together are multiple. In the first one, I can wait to that a little. The first one is an epistemological problem. How should I relate to their ideas, to their conviction, to their faith, to their ideas, towards the content of their religion? The other one is an ethical or more practical problem, how you should react to the people themselves that has it. And it's important to distinguish with the epistemological and normative or ethical problem, because they can be tackled in different ways. I would primarily tackle the first of these today, but we're going to come into the second a little more. The first thing we should do is to delineate the various options we have on the epistemological problem. And second problem is to see, can we say that any of those are better or worse than the other ones? The total number are quite limited, and I have here 6 options. And we should see later on if any of them can be rational. My own examples when we talk about these will be primarily taken from conflicts between Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. Although there is a problem, I shall come back there to talk about Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism as monolithic parts. And as I said, when I talk about the philosophical aspect, that's the macro level. Conflicts can be between individuals, but it can also be between groups, and it can be between whole states, as we know. We're focusing on the individual level now, and I think that's important for the group and for the mission, the macro level too. The 6 alternatives I've figured out here. To abandon my own religious tradition, faith, or sub-tradition in favor of the religious tradition of the other, of the one I meet. To completely forsake adherence to any and all religious traditions. To tightly maintain adherence to my own religious tradition, considering it to be the only true one and correct faith, with all other being false or mistaken. Or to more loosely maintain adherence to my own religious tradition, considering it to be more true, correct, and right than the others, which are being more or less false. There's a problem here. Can truth be more or less? Or is truth a flat concept? Mathematicians and logicians normally argue that truth are flat concepts. You can't be more or less true. I can argue, but I shouldn't bore you with that now, that you can, there are ways in which you can argue for there is a more or less true things. I should not do that with you right here and now. To consider all religious traditions 5, including my own, to be equivalent, equally true and correct and right, and at least at a deeper level, but to maintain adherence to my own tradition faith nonetheless. And 6, to suspend my judgment for the time being and abstain from taking a stand relative to these options. These are the main options I can see. But you might also say that there is an alternative. And that is to create a new hybridized religious tradition by retaining certain elements of my own tradition and combining these with certain elements of one or several other traditions' faith that I encounter, possibly even including elements of my own invention. And as you know, this is a very common way to deal with things in the so-called New Age traditions, which I've talked about in a lot of places before. I'm not going to go into that now, although there is good reasons to do that. And one reason is, when we talk about religious traditions, you cannot talk about them as fixed things. They're not like stones handed from father to son and mother to daughter through history. Religious traditions are always changing. If you read history of religion, you can see that all religious traditions are changing to adapt to present circumstances. That's the way they survive. There's a huge graveyard of religious traditions that is not adapted to changes. But the big ones, they change quite a bit over time. They're like rivers. They go along, meandering along and change. Even though there are certain things that might not change, but most of them are changing. Like I used to take an example when I talked in Sweden. We had an archbishop a little while ago who was fairly liberal in his religious traditions. If he had had these ideas 500 years earlier, he would have been burned at the stake for being a heretic. Now he was the head of the whole church. You can see the same in all traditions, how they are interpreted, they change. Returning to our topics. There is an important pre-request when you discuss these. When you discuss how one identify, how one person from one tradition can affect and meet another tradition. Only if there are identifiable differences between them. Like one tradition claims something that is opposite to what another tradition claims, or that there are different behaviors which you can't have at the same time. One tradition demands some behavior and the other tradition prohibits the same tradition. Then you have noticeable conflicts, and they are normally fewer than you think. I would say that most problems whether you have religious traditions that meet are more on a psychological level than a real level. It's people don't like the other person. So that's a different question. And you can see that even within Christianity, there are intra-religious conflicts. Like some Christian traditions, for them to say everybody who believes in Jesus Christ as the Savior is a Christian. There are any number of other traditions who say, if you don't believe exactly what I believe, what our traditions say, you're a heretic and you will end up in hell. And there are many Christian traditions. There is a book coming out every so many years in the States reporting on all the Christian denominations. And the last issue had 3,000 different religious denominations. And many of them claim that they are the only correct ones. All other ones are going to go to hell. And you can see the same within Islam. There is probably more intra-religious conflicts there than with inter-religious conflicts with other traditions. But we keep between the traditions. We have to do that here now. And another way of talking about it is not maybe going on the content, the beliefs, but how you hold your beliefs. Because if you're a sociologist or psychologist of religion, you realize pretty quick that if you have a spectra of the way you can hold, the way you can have a tradition, you can be on what you might call the fundamentalistic side of the tradition, or you can be on the mystic side of the tradition. And what you see a lot of times is that a fundamentalistic oriental Christian has more in common with a fundamentalistic oriental Muslim than he has with a mystical Christian. And the same with a Muslim. He has more in common with a fundamentalistic Christian than with he has with a mystic Muslim. So we're going to stay with the inter-religious conflict, not the intra. So the conflicts between them, they can be in terms of content or belief, an epistemological conflict. They can be in terms of ethical ideals and demands, norms and value system. And they can be about rites and rituals, the practical efficacy of the tradition. We're going to talk about these. But I have to speed up here a bit. The important thing here is to see that all of these questions that you have, all of the answers you have, are in one sense normative. There is no way of determining who is a Christian, who is a Muslim, who is a Hindu, etc., from an empirical point of view. Of course, you can go out and ask people, are you this or the other? And that's one way an empirical point of view. But there is no other way. Otherwise, it's a normative issue. And even on the state level, you have to have some substantive division first. Like India, Sweden, other countries have freedom of religion acts in their constitution. And then you have to have an idea about what is a religion. And that always has a normative component. We can't get away from that. Unless you're sort of essentialistic, which we aren't. So, if you're going to talk about make the right religion, we can go back here, take that first. You have a few options. A religion can be right or true in regards to its cognitive beliefs, to the content, to what they claim about various things. It's ontological, epistemological, anthropological, and sociological assumptions they have. It can be right or true in terms of what ethical demands and ideas, norms and values it has. And it can be right and wrong in terms of its rites and rituals, which, for example, rituals are most effective to reach the goal of the religion. So that's an effectiveness. And it's important which difference we're talking about. Do we mainly talk about the epistemological or the ethical or the rites and rituals, the practical thing? And to get an answer to that, I think I would talk about a little about why do we have religions? Why are there religions? Why being religious? And then we have to see what basic functions do religion fulfill for the human being. I think the first reason, the first function they fulfill is they describe the way that we as human beings ought to live the best, good, the right, and the true human life. And that is, if it's a religion, always in accordance with a transcendent and trans-empirical reality of some sort, personal or impersonal or whatever. We're going to come back to that. there is some ground of reality, some ens realism, as you call it, and to live according to that is live the right life. They also give answers to our most basic existential questions, such who we are, where we come from, where are we, why are we here on Earth, in our specific socioeconomic circumstances, health circumstances, etc. How we should relate to our other beings, how we are going to relate to them as groups or as individuals, how we should relate to the world at large, to nature and so on, if you want to live the right and good life. So, in sum, how we as human beings are to live our lives and relate to our fellow human beings as individuals and groups, as well as to other beings in nature at large, if you want to live the right, the good, or the authentic lives. And to do this, they can go back here. They all presuppose, as I said, there is a transcendent and holy reality. And that means that all religious traditions have a specific ontology which has to be examined. And that ontology always includes a dual universe with a transcendent sphere, which is objectively, they claim, truer, more true, and also more real than the empirical one. You can see that if you look at everybody who describes their religious experiences. They go around the world life, they go buy milk, they do various things. They have an experience of another dimension in the universe. And when they come back from that, they realize that they have to learn what that dimension wants them to do, how you should live according to that, because that experience is absolutely real and absolutely normative power. They also have a specific epistemology. All religions claims that we as human beings can get knowledge about these traditions, can get knowledge about that transcendent sphere, either directly through meditation or whatever, or indirectly through religious elites and how they have written down their experiences in various scriptures. Some traditions are more for the experience, some are more for the scriptural type of thing. Almost everything we call the religious traditions also have some idea about the development of the universe. And there we see that they're normally talking about a devolution. Most scientists and most scientists have an evolution. Evolution means we go from a worse condition to a better condition. Most religions have the other way around. They claim something like a golden age in the beginning, where there was a large harmony between the people on earth and the transcendent reality, and then that have degenerated. And like if you're a Hindu, you're at the present state living in Kali Yuga, which is not so nice when you read about it in the Vedas. That's a pretty bad state to be in. So, all religions contain a different opinion about our most basic existential problems. Okay, go ahead. This is what we just talked about. And that's to say that they have an anthropology. I get to the last stage here. And the religious anthropologists normally look like an anthropology is a theory of man. And a typical religious anthropology looks something like this. They have an idea about what the humans, whether male, female, Swedes, or what up, can optimally be if we realize our true potentials. An idea about the ideal human condition. They have a diagnosis about the way we de facto are living in this world, which in comparison to one above is perceived as a great disharmony. We are not what we actually can or could be if we did our best. They have an idea about the causes or reasons for this disharmony, as well whether or not it can be overcome. Normally they believe it can be overcome, so it's a positive disharmony. They have an idea about the cure or ordination, what to do to overcome it, and they have an idea about the ideal state that can be reached, for example, the afterlife, whatever. You who know, you Buddhists, you can see that when the Buddha had his first sermon in Sarnath, not too far away from here in the deer park, his first sermon more or less followed these ideas. In the beginning, bhikshus, that is fire, 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 and then it kept going. And this is something you can find as a very common theme in most religion, to portray the position of the human being in this way. So there is liberation. We can, it's a positive disharmony, we can get to the ideal state. And we can achieve liberation, we can achieve transformation. And then we have to think about that in different ways. There is liberation from something, there is liberation to something, and there is liberation with the help of something. And different people from different traditions can conflict on their ideas about these things. I would say that what they conflict the most about are the last point. But the main idea is that we have to be able to go from one state to another state. And then we have to see on salvation as a goal, or salvation as a means. And I think that how our tradition can differ here. So they have different diagnoses about human condition. They have different ideas about the nature of the ideal human life. They have different ideas about the causes of our worldly state, and they prescribe different roads to liberation, different causes and means, and they describe the state different. I think that the fourth of these are the one that's where they have the most conflict. And this is on the individual level, and that can be called the soteriological interreligious difference. And I think that's one of the key ones we're going to talk about. But of course, the difference on meso level, group level, and macro level on state level is as big. And that has, on the macro level and meso level, they can easily have political consequences, which you see very clearly in the Islamic world today. They're fighting about the difference how you can get from the present coexistence to how you can get to the state. They blow each other up in huge amounts there. And now, we're a bit closer now to say what makes a religion right. It has to do with the notion of liberation, and particularly with liberation as a mean. But all these presupposes, of course, that the ontological, epistemological, and anthropological assumptions of the tradition are correct. If they're wrong, things fall apart. Like if the statement that there is a God is false, then the rest of it falls down. If, like David Hume claimed, if God exists, he's not good, he's an evil, he's a devil, then all these things fall apart too, because then there is no liberation to be having. So a particular way to liberation can only be rational if a large number of theoretical, epistemological, and other questions are also answered in a reasonable way. But my view is that when you think about how you should deal with your own religion in relation to other people, you should primarily consider the soteriological aspects, and secondarily the ontological, epistemological, anthropological theories. So my final answer to what makes a religious tradition rational or right has to do with soteriology mainly. When it comes to rationality, rationality is a very much debated concept. It normally means to exercise the ability of reason. So that rationality is in the sphere of epistemology. And you can ask then, how do we ask rationally when it comes to our life goals? And how do we come rationally when it comes to our strategies, when it comes to our means to reach those life goals? And rationality also can be meaning optimally. Okay, here's these. Actually, gone these. So, to go back, what types of life goals are rational to choose from? And what strategies are rational to reach these goals? How human beings act rationally to the extent that they hold correct beliefs about the properties of the world that are relevant to their goals and ambitions. If you have wrong beliefs about how the world works, what's in the world, what exists, rationality falls down. And hold correct beliefs about themselves as an actor, the knowledge, imitation, psychological, physical skills, etc. So the more knowledge you have about the world, the more knowledge you have about yourself, the more you're able to act rational if you start thinking about those things. And besides knowledge about oneself and the world, you have to have a well-informed and thought-through normative system by which to judge various options at your disposal. As I said before, you can never get away from a normative system. What is for you good and bad? And also you have maybe one of the bigger problems, your ability to draw valid, justified, and/or good conclusions, make correct inferences from limited amounts of facts. And we always has very limited amounts of facts. If you know the now dead theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, he was one of the most known for a while. He was in a wheelchair. You might remember he had ALS. One of the most famous physicists. He said, "What do we know about the universe?" He said, "We know that about 85% of what exists in the universe is black matter and black energy, i.e. something we by definition can't know anything about. The other 15%, the white energy and the white matter, if we're lucky, we know about 1 or 2% about that right now. So if he is correct, which I think he is, from a hard scientific point of view, what we know is about 1 or 2% or 15% of all there is to know. So we should have a fairly humble attitude towards what we know. We know very little. And that's also the conclusion can make it that, say, Aristotle and Einstein came to. And they both said that the older they got, the more they realized how little they know. Because as Einstein said, when you learn one new thing, you learn there are 4 more things you don't know. So the amount of knowledge, what you know you don't know, grows exponentially on what you know that you know. So the more you learn, the less you really know in relationship to what there is, what you know you don't know. And then there is everything else you don't even know that you don't know. So you should have a humble attitude in philosophy as in science. And then you have another option. When it talks about knowledge about the world, what knowledge should we take here? We have an option here. We can mean true beliefs in a correspondence, theoretical way. What is normally understood as knowledge in science. And we can have this what we call socially approved beliefs, or socially approved knowledge, knowledge that is more subjective in nature, life or knowledge. My suggestion is we take for the second one, and for reasons. Alfred Schutz, a Austrian American philosopher, sociologist, he talked about the problem. This was the problem that Professor Martin talked about last time here also. What can we know? And he claimed that man is born, we are all born, into a world that existed before our birth. And this world is from the beginning not merely a physical, but also a social-cultural one. This social world into which man is born, and within which he has to find his bearings, is experienced by him as a tightly knit web of social relationships, a system of signs and symbols with a particular meaning structures of institutionalized forms of social organization, systems of status and prestige, etc. This means that all these elements of the social world, in all their diversity and stratification, as well as their patterns of the texture itself, is by those who live in there taken just for granted. So most of the things we think we know, we have not experienced by ourselves. These things we've taken over from our parents, teachers, and so on. That's why people in different parts of the world can live in so different life worlds. They can have completely different ideas about how the world is around them. But according to Schutz and lots of other pseudoscientists, there is no way out of the life world. We all had to start within our life world and work from there. And which is called our natural attitude. That's the attitude of most people who believe that what the eye sees, what the brain experiences is the same as what the eye sees, what the brain experiences is the same as the ear hears, etc. We are unable to get out of our life world. The only thing we can be asked of those people and ourselves is to rationally decide upon life goals and how to reach them, is to take the socially approved knowledge of their time and place in reflective consideration. So we have to leave having any scientifically ambitions here in the strict sense. And the most pregnant formulation about that was by a man called Thomas C.I. Thomas, who said, if men define the situation as real, they are real in their consequences. It's simple. If you believe there is a demon in your basement, you don't go down there, by definition. So even if that doesn't exist, a demon down there, it's real for you to actually act as it was real. And if people act in the world is the most important thing, and they act on their beliefs. So, from a philosophical point of view, we will, in other words, reject the extremely influential environmental theory of justification known as evidentialism, which holds that our reasons for adhering to a belief should be solely based upon hard, objective scientific evidence, meaning that it is the only or the preferred criterion for the rational holding of beliefs. I will argue what's called presumptivism, the opinion that it is justified and even rational to hold the belief we hold until we are faced with counter evidence and reasonable reasons for doubting those beliefs. And there are many reasons for why I prefer presumptivism, but I shouldn't get into those now. And one is, in terms of economy, you might say, that for most people, we can't spend our whole day questioning and thinking through our beliefs of the world. Is that true? Is that not true? That's what professional philosophers do. For other people, that is, I think, a recipe for social suicide if you spend too much time thinking about those problems. And one thing, again, is I don't think that most people are religious because of the truth or falsity of the cognitive beliefs of their tradition. They are adhering to their tradition mainly because the practical help they can get from it, the practical help in one's life to deal with existential situation, you want that before too, so that the religious tradition help them to deal with all the problems of living. They guide them through the life. And this is the reason why most religious people put more emphasis on religious authorities than on their texts they have. It's practical usefulness that are attracting people. And what relevance does this have for our tradition? I would say that if it's true that I'm saying here, that if you go through all these various stages of discussion with yourself about the theoretical part, the epistemological thing, the ontology tradition, the ethical tradition, etc. And you probably come to the same conclusion I had, that the reason you're part of that tradition is not mainly because that those theoretical parts are the better, more correct than others, but it's because the tradition you're in gives you help on a psychological level to live your life properly. So it's the way you have to go to your transcendent goal, the means to liberation. That's the most important part for you, by being a guide. So, and I think that if you can be rational in terms of guiding in the way I said before. So how should we deal with people? Which of our initial positions can help us to live the best possible way? As far as I can see, it could be with openness to learn, grow and develop, embrace some version of the fifth alternative, to consider all our religious traditions, including my own, to be equally true, correct and right, at least on the deeper level, on the counter evidence, but to maintain adherence to my own tradition and faith nonetheless. Because to stay in the tradition that is in your own life road, then you have the best help of having it as a guide for your life. Thank you. That was very quick, but I hope it was understandable to some extent. Questions? And if you want to see the details and not just a broad overview, I have a paper I can share with you later.
Thank you so much, sir. Please have your seat. Now, the time is to discuss about the talk. So it's open to all of you. Please raise your question. Okay, come.
Good afternoon, sir, and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much for such a wonderful lecture. So here's my one concern, and that has been, I think, entailed me for so long. That's why I came into philosophical world. I'm little agnostic about the structure and the nature of religion. I mean, the kind of structure and the kind of predicament the religion has been practiced by human history. I mean, if we take the recourse to the human history, then you find this is the human history is very much wounded and cherished in the name of religious euphoria and religious dystopia at the same time. So I think religion is not the final answer of human quest and human intellectual scrutiny. So because human quest is very much primitive and prehistoric than religious normative dogmas and religious thinking. So when it comes to the meaning of life, religion becomes just a solace to human's quest. It's not, it does not render any meaning to the life. So I need your comment over that. Thank you.
Okay. The question of meaning in life, the meaning of life, two different questions, are hard. And I think that religion can give to people both meaning in life and meaning of life. Meaning of life only means that there is something outside our life that we should try to approach. And that thing, whether it's personal or impersonal, to try to behave in accordance with what that's supposed to tell us, can give people meaning of life. They feel their life to be meaningful when they try to fulfill those rules. It can also give meaning in life, whether or not there is anything outside life. Maybe, as atheist claims, this life is it, there is nothing outside life. Then what can give meaning in life is what we do here and now in life. And you can have like soccer to be your meaning in life. You do that and that gives you meaning. You can have your family to be meaning in life, to be a good father and mother, gives meaning to your life. But you can also have the religion. I mean, the religion as a systematic system of beliefs and behaviors, and possibly also organized into a church or some other congregation. And to be part of that and feel that you're an integrated part of that community can easily give life meaning for you. So I think the religion can give life, can give meaning in life and meaning of life, both of them. But it doesn't necessarily want to do it, but it can do it for people.
Thank you so much, sir. I have a couple of questions. Firstly, I would like to ask that in your talk sometimes or some places you have discussed about best life through this religious pluralism. I think in commonsensical ground, we the ordinary human has skepticism regarding religion or plural number of religion. What sort of belief or faith is so solid for us to overcome these situations? So therefore, I would like to ask, what is the best life of a human in the multi-religious world? Or otherwise, I can ask, how do you determine the best life in a religious pluralism? This is first one. Then second one is that sometimes you discuss about dual aspect of liberalism. Liberalism with respect to liberalism as a mean, liberalism as an end. So, what is the ontological semantics of the dual aspect of this doctrine, liberalism? Yes, liberalism, yes. And very fundamental question is, the last one is that, what is the fundamental element act as a cause behind religious pluralism? Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, let's start from behind, and I hope I can get all the questions, otherwise you have to remind me. The cause behind religious pluralism. I think it is the following. There has been people, if you look through the history of religion, there has been people all over the world which are normally known as a religious elite in the literature. They can be the Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, whatever. There's been those kind of people all over the world. And for one reason or the other, they have been getting experiences of something which is out of this world. They've been in this world and they had their experiences. They have gotten a very strong, powerful experience of something outside this world. And most of them has decided that I have to tell everybody else about these. When it comes to the Buddha, it took a bit of convincing. But when it comes to most of them, they go out there and try to talk about it. And when you talk about it, you have to talk about it in a way that's understandable by the people around you. So in India, you can talk about it in Sanskrit or Pali or the Prakrit language, which is there. If you're in the Middle East, you talk about it in Arabic. If you're in China, you talk about it in Chinese, etc. And it's not just the language you talk about it in, it's also the social setting you're in there. You have to talk about it in a way that people can relate it to their own time and space, to their own life work. And as those are different, the religious traditions start different. And even if a lot of the thing with the founders of religion are pretty similar, you might say, they're not the only ones, because you have the tradition. In the beginning, it's very, very thin cognitively, just very, very thin. But then other people, other religious people, keep adding to the tradition. And you get a basket, or you get what you want to call it. People add on and add on and add on through history. That basket, that library of what your tradition is, keeps growing. And after a while, after about 1,000 years or two, then you have too much in there to use at the same time. So what do? Various people pick out things that are useful for their projects here and now. If you want to make a social change in your society, you find the right things in the tradition and you say, this is what we have to do with our tradition. If you want to do something else, you find other things. And all the traditions are there for plastic. Can you see my own, at least cultural tradition, Christianity? You can find things in the Bible that the homophobes say is a sin to be homosexual. It's a sin to have same-sex marriage. You can find other people who picks other things and do other interpretation and say this is good. Same in Islam. You have the Islamic feminists who claims that Islam is really a feministic religion, and they make good arguments for that. It's just like old men has corrupted it. You have old men that say, oh no, it's not the case. Each tradition has a huge corpus of ideas after all you can pick out. So it's this adaptation to social, political, economical circumstances during the world that's created different traditions. That was the question. Really wrong. Best life was the first thing you asked. What's the best life? That's another one of those things that takes several books. But I would say that a good life is a life of growing. And there is within psychology one of the main theories called developmental psychology. And there they normally put out different stages human beings go through. And the ideal stage is you learn more, you grow, you learn more, you grow, you learn more, you grow. And at that time, you become not just more knowledgeable, you become wiser. And what does that mean? It means exactly what I said before, that Socrates and Einstein had said, that the older you get, the more you know, but also the more you know how little you know. So you get more humble in the rest of the life. And I think that in itself creates less conflicts in your life with your wife, with your kids, with your workmates, and with everybody else. And that's a good life. A life which makes a lot less conflict than other possible lives. And then there are also, of course, conditions. And one condition is material. To have a good life, you have to have at least enough material security to be able to live it without starving or without getting rained on at night and so on. But more money just gives more pleasure to a certain point. And there's lots of studies about that. It's called degeneration of marginal benefits. To a certain point, another 1,000 rupees, another 10,000 rupees a month increases your life, pleasure. But at a certain point, it starts flattening out, and more money does not lead to a more happy life. And then it starts going down in the end. You get so worried about losing all your money, and you start fighting over, so you get less up. So you have to have certain material condition. There's probably also some psychological conditions. I would think that most psychology indicates that you should have at least some very close friends, like a wife or other very close friends, where you feel you can share more or less everything about you. You don't need to hide things about yourself from. And how many of those should be can vary, but you have to have a few of those. And if you have those material conditions, money enough, social network enough, and can learn to be a wise person, then you live the best possible life. But psychology also proves that they are very few. Most people get stuck somewhere on this trajectory upward and get stuck with, I'm right now, blah, blah, blah. But if you can be enough to keep going, you lead a good life. The ontology behind liberation, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but as I said, you have to have certain things for liberation to work at all. You have to have certain preconditions. One is that there actually is a way to get liberated from a state you're in that there is a better state to be getting to. If it's not true that you can get anywhere else, then of course it can't work. And when you get the description of the state you should get into, that's got to be a state that's actually reachable by the methods that the people who claim liberation is possible. So there's got to be a connection with the methods and goal. And so if it was, I don't know if that's what you meant, but there was one more questions about I can't remember what I wrote something here, but I can't even see what I wrote myself.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, sir. Please, yes.
First of all, congratulations on your very beautiful lecture. So you rejected evidentialism on the ground that it seeks hard evidence. So I would say that things have changed over the millennia, over the centuries. Now we have falsification theory rather than verification theory. So that must be taken into account. And second thing, you advocated presumptivism. And by that you meant that we need counter evidence. Okay. Counter evidence alone will enable a religionist to reform his or her framework. It is my correct understanding of what you. So this is the problem. In spite of preponderance of counter evidence, religionists would not change their framework. For example, we have a preponderance of biological evolution that disproves the thesis of creationism. But no religionist would revise her framework of God and all this. Similarly, every religion has the other of that religion. Okay, and religion has been the source of oppression, exploitation of even those who are within the religion. Okay, so how to address these questions? And my final submission is, instead of treating all religions as true, let us treat them all as false.
Okay. The easy way for me to get out of these problems would say that I was talking about how should a religious adherent relate to other religious adherents of different faiths. So if you get outside the religious adherence, and by an adherence I mean not just somebody who is a Christian or Muslim like that, but they also believe and act in the tradition. But I shouldn't take that easy way out. Why I argue for presumptivism is because if you do hard science, evidentialism is obviously what you should go for. But when you're working in the pseudosciences and when you're working with human beings, normal human beings, knowledge about their own reality and about themselves, that knowledge is life world relativistic. Most of the normal people, they don't have the education or the aptitude or whatever to start questioning too much of what is the life world knowledge. You do that. You learn it from your parents, from your peers, from your superiors, and you follow that. And for very good reasons. If you do not follow the basic, or so call it, tenets in your life world, you get in trouble. And if your life world has a specific ethics, specific relation between men and women, you might think about it whatever you want. If you break those rules, you get a lot of conflict with other people. And they might start shunning you, you get outcast, you might even get in jail if you do certain things, but it's perfectly okay to do in New York or in Sweden in an intersexual relationship. So there are strong reasons why you should follow what's within your life world. And that presupposes presumptionism. You can never get truth there, but I say you can get rationality. You can get that kind of subjective rationality I was talking about. That if you think as far as you can, as far as can be expected of a person up given their educational level and so on, if they actually do the best they can to think through those questions about ontology, epistemology, and so on, that the life world has told them, and they come to a conclusion, I would say we have to accept that they act rationally. There's no way around that. And the thing that religious people don't accept counter evidence. I think that's true for quite a number of religious people. As I said before, in the philosophy of religion and psychology of religion, there is a term called religious orientation. And that is you investigate how people are connected to their religion. And you have what they call intrinsic, they can be the fundamentalistic people. There is, I found it, those kind of people. They got a truth when they're young, and they will never let go of that, no matter whatever happened. Those people exist. They're lost. As I say, I don't think they live a good life. They petrify themselves, they freeze at a certain stage of their development, and then they don't live what we talked about before as the good life. You have the extrinsic people, the people who are part of a tradition. They go to church, etc., to get a good reputation in the community. If you're a second-hand car dealer in the United States, if you don't go to church, nobody buys a car from you. You have to get a reputation of being religious, then you're an honest person, then you can rip them off. And you have the people that are called quest people. That's the people who are in religion to try to find truth, to try to work towards the religious truth. They are a minority normally. The extrinsic people, the middle group, are the majority. But those people who are the quest, the searchers, they are open for counter evidence. They're at least open to consider counter evidence. If you tell them, you do this and that, because you think that brings you closer to God or closer to Nirvana, whatever. But if you do it so and so and so instead, it's going to work better. And then, oh yeah, let's try. And then they try that and they see where it leads. And that's okay. So you have all kinds of people in the religions that, for some of them, refuse to accept counter evidences, and they are not rational at all. I don't say that. I said, to be rational, you can be in your life for knowledge, but you have to be open to counter evidence to the extent that you're educated and trained to think about them. Why not say that all religions are true? I didn't say that all religions are true. I said that you can't. When it comes to metaphysical statements, I don't think you can claim truth in any traditional philosophical sense, which is normally that it corresponds to something outside of a correspondence theoretical evidence for truth. You can't do that. But I think with all lead law, there are ways to discuss metaphysical statements can be more or less reasonable. And one of those things is that if there is something that human beings has claimed, probably even before there were human beings, even there were Neanderthals and so on, and things like, have had some ideas about transcendent realities, or that there are realities outside of the normal empirical reality. That's the claiming. That's, to me, a fairly good reason to not discard it. I don't say it's a good reason to believe it's true necessarily, but it's a fairly good reason not to discard it as being false. So the evidence would fall to the atheist to prove that's false rather than to the religious person to prove that it's right.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to request the audience from online to put their question, please.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible to you, sir? Am I audible? Ashish, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
And I'm also interested in how religious politics can have a kind of postmodern. There are
Sir, your
certain
voice is
breaking. Am I audible now? Hello? Ashish, am I audible?
Yes, yes, audible.
So actually, I was just talking about the inner
Hello?
consistencies of. I think there is a problem with my network. I will write them down in the comment chat box, sir.
Texting, okay. Rajan, can you please repeat briefly?
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sir. I was just talking about the inner inconsistencies that exist in the religious pluralism. Take for an instance, when we talk about the transcendental unity or the moral unity, so how to deal with it when people talk about the relativism or nihilism in this section? Either people are believing that morals are different, or people are believing that there is no transcendental reality at all. So this is my one question, that how to deal with the inner inconsistency inner irregularities that exist in the religious pluralism. My second comment is that religions are often more tend to be prone to become cults. So how to deal with this lacuna that exists in the religion? So like how can we prevent our religion to become cult that has existed since ancient time? And even not in the religion, there are number of disciplines that have faced the idea of this dogmatic cult. Marxism also faced this dogma. Then logical positivism also faced this dogma, and religions have faced this problem for a very long. So how can we prevent our religions to become cult? So this is my humble inquiry. If you could contemplate upon it, thank you.
Okay, sir. Uh, hopefully it is very something like how do you determine or how do you understand inner consistency within the frame of religious pluralism, having yes, multiple dimension of morality.
If I understood your question, like why there are people without religion in a sense. As I try to say, religion is some form of ideology in the work. There are other forms of ideologies. It can be Marxism, liberalism, Nazism, neo-Nazism, whatever. What I try to argue is that what distinguishes them is that the religious ideologies, they have this specific ontology, that there is another sphere within the universe, and that the answers to our life questions and how we should live, it exists in that sphere. And that we have an epistemology saying that we have ways to get those answers and bring them down to earth, if you want. Where in Marxism and liberalism and other isms, there are no such claims. They think that it's only we human beings together who decide how we should live our life. Or if you have the authoritarian ideologies, there is one person or two persons, Marx and Lenin or whatever, who decides it. But in other cases, they are very similar. They have a book that they refer to, they have an organization, and they have all these kind of things. But the difference is their belief in a transcendent answer. And of course, nobody needs to be religion. Nobody needs to be religious. So it's up to everybody else what they want to be or not. So I have no problem with that. When you mentioned transcendence, if transcendence is real, I mean, I think in a sense, yes. Because in science, the only realities we can talk about are people's experiences. We can't talk about anything outside people's experiences. Already Immanuel Kant proves that to us very clearly. And people are experiences transcendence. So transcendence exists as experienced realities, as other realities exist as experienced realities. And if you want to read more about this, there is an interesting field right now in philosophy, which has to do with virtual reality philosophy. Are virtual realities real? Can we live a good life in virtual reality? And there are several books coming out lately who argues, yes, virtual realities are as real as any other reality, and you can live as good a life in virtual realities as any other reality. I don't say that I agree with them all out, but it's very interesting, and it's a growing field now by young philosophers. And it has bearing on religiosity in the sense that it's only our experiences we have to live on. Something of what you said, right?
Thank you so much, sir. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, sir, for really interesting talk that you presented. I just wanted to ask a question, not from a perspective of pluralism of the religions and whether there will be a possibility of pluralistic approach towards various religions possible. But I think if we can really see if there is a tenability of religious truth, right, of any particular religions, then we can also think about the possibility of pluralism in religions. Now, I just want to ask questions for any religion within, and I would like to bring in here the age-old debate that Plato has mentioned between Euthyphro and Socrates. And he was saying, and he was just talking about in reference with the idea of good. And we all know that for any religion, the idea of good is nothing but the will of God, right? So whatever God wills, that will become the good for human beings. But then Plato, through Socrates, was questioning this idea that if you say that the will of God will become good, then you are making or escalating your God at the level of dictator, right? And no one who is a believer will accept God as being dictator. So then he said that the idea of good is not below God, or it does not emanate from the idea of good God, rather the idea of good above God, and the God has to also think or will in relation with good, and that is how his will can be understood as good. So now how would you explain this possibility of living ethical life or good life if you really accept God as the sole authority from which the idea of good comments from? Another question is, since this artificial intelligence has really come into being and it has started affecting human beings' life, and I was just watching one movie based on artificial intelligence where the director had this discussion in the beginning when people were saying that if you can possibly create a robot, right, which is possessing all human intelligence and emotions, and suppose if the robot started loving human beings, what would be the possibility of reciprocating the similar love that robots started having, right? Since we all know that human beings have created robots and they are machine, they may start loving human beings, but as a human being, we will never love them back as they might be loving. Then the director actually reposed the questions in the same direction and said the same question has always been there with the human beings and God. As the human beings can never love the robot that they have created in the same fashion, because you know they are machines, you can dismantle them any moment of time, you can recreate them. Similarly, if God has created us with the same capacity, the kinds of agony, suffering, and misery that you are having, it doesn't make sense to the God, right? Because God knows that he has created you in a flick of moment. He can do anything, any moment of time. So the amount of suffering and feelings that you are having, or the kinds of prayer you are making to the God to respond to your prayers, I think will become completely null and void. They will not have any bearing to the truth. So how would you like to respond to them? Thank you.
You give me those almost impossible questions, but to at least start in the end of it. I'm not sure that the premises of that thing you said with the robots are true. If, which I think is going to not be an if anymore in about 30 years or so, if artificial, you call them robots, get complex enough to get consciousness, which is a tough thing to define what that is, but at least it should mean that they can feel love, they can feel pain, they can feel anger, they can feel that they've been cheated and so on, so they have emotions. If robots in that sense become as good as humans, I don't think that humans can't love them. I'm fairly sure actually they can do that. But that's an empirical question. We have to see when it comes. But if that analogy fails, then I'm not sure that if you have an world view that presupposes the personal God, first of all, which you assume there, and that that God has, in some kind of intentional act, created human beings, that God can love those human beings. That's the same problem. I can't see why that cannot be true. That's an empirical question. It might very well be that he or she it can't, but I can't see any reasons why God couldn't love his or her creation. I mean, in a sense, our children are our creations. It doesn't mean that we can't love them. We do love them a lot. So, I mean, your question presupposes a lot of things that I'm not sure are there. But if they're there, it's good questions. Also, it's if you could live a good life following God? Because you said that for many religious people, and that's true, to live the good life is to live the life prescribed by God. Okay. What life is prescribed by God? In most traditions, it's the okay. One step back. I said before that I believe that all religions are empirical in the sense that they are started by some individuals' experiences. So they're empirical in the same sense as everything else, but start by human beings' experience. The original experiences people have are not all that detailed. So, like if you look in Christianity and in Islam, a lot of the rules for how you should live our lives has been added on by theologians as the history has been going on. And even in Islam, where it's a shorter connection between the revelations of Muhammad and the Quran, there is a huge number of interpretations of Sharia. You can go to different traditions in Islam and find very different traditions of Sharia. Like I would say the main one of the middle of the road Muslim theologians in like Cairo, there is a Sharia at God. So they're ontological realists when it comes to the existence of Sharia at God. But they are epistemological relativists when it comes to can we know it? And they say no, because they also know that throughout history there's been any number of people pretending to say this exactly is Sharia, this is Sharia, and it's been proven to be historically and geographically tinted. So we can know that. And I myself would have an opinion, if you excuse it being very simple in a sense, that if there is a God, in the sense that you talk about, some conscious being that has an intention with the universe, if there is a God that has an intention with the whole universe, that God should worrying what we're eating, how long hair we have, how we do this and that, is completely weird. He has enough to worry about running a whole universe, to worry about if I can eat or drink that and keep my hair long and short. That's just social things done by people to want to keep me in a position to keep their own power up. That's my position. I hope it's somewhat of an answer to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I'll go to again online mode. Those who are interested, please raise your question, please. Okay, now I think Florence is interested to ask one question. So please.
All right, good afternoon. Listening your presentation, religious pluralism, a philosophical perspective on that question, you have established that there is religious pluralism. This is quite clear as we see in the world that there are many religions and people following all that. And you also aim to establish all this through your epistemology, normatives, and all other evidential proofs. But while reading the Rig Veda, we find there is a text, Ekam Sad Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. Reality is one, but the wise people say as many. I suppose such type of statement goes one step further than what you established. One thing establishing there are religions or pluralism, but other things going one step further and trying to understand this reality. How do you interpret such text in your presentation? And if you can ask one more question. Second question I wanted to ask about the religious conflict you said about. The conflict within ad intra and ad extra we call as in. So which is more dominant in fact? Which is more dominant, that it is creating problem in the world Today, religion is a big problem for many of us, many people. It's a true. We cannot deny that. So where is the problem lies? Within or outside? Thank you.
I start with the easy one, the second one. If you compare inter-religious conflict and intra-religious conflict, I just touched down very quick on that in my remarks. And I would say that in today's world, intra-religious conflicts are more of a problem than inter-religious conflicts. And particularly in the Islamic community, where you have enormous a lot of bloodshed being done because people against some Muslims against other Muslims because of the wrong Muslims. But there are also within the Western world, like a lot of the so-called cultural war in the United States at the moment, which is fueled by Donald Trump, has to do with intra-religious conflicts too. So, I definitely think that the intra-religious conflicts are more problematic and more dangerous and difficult in the world today. The Rig Veda quote you gave, that reality is one, human beings makes it many. I think that rides on a idea about what reality is. If reality is everything that human mind can conceive, then it's true, because then you include the various transcendent spheres in reality. If by reality you mean, or Veda means, things that have extension in time and space, like these pen, then it's not just what people think, because then there are different realities. So as I say, a business person in New York lives in a different reality than a monk in Tibet in very clear senses. But on an sort of how should I say, because Rig Veda claims to have a non-relative truth. It claims to have the absolute truth, the view from nowhere, basically, about the world. And if it's, I'm not so sure with that part of the Rig Veda is any kind of idealistic, or if it's a realistic or dualistic ontology in there. But I mean, I'm not an expert on Rig Veda, but I seem to remember you can argue that there are both positions of idealism, realism, and dualism within Rig Veda. So you have to discuss what reality is in that case to see if it's one or many. Sorry.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to request the chairman of this seminar to preside the session.
So, thank you, Professor Alexander, for presenting such a lecture in so simple and so understandable language. I found him not quoting as usual, people quote, but not quoting so many texts, so many scholars, so many authors. He simply, I think, quoted 2 or 3 books. And otherwise, it was all his own understanding in his own simple words. Language definitely communicates a lot, but the body language also communicates a lot. And you can find Professor Sender so simple and taking things so lightly and with a wonderful smile you can see on his face. As usual, we have been uh, experiencing for last several years. So thank you very much, Professor Sander, for your now actually this this topic has a very wide range, and somewhere you have to see the origin of religion, then religions, then splits within religions, different sects. Somewhere these things relate with human psyche, emotions, several kinds of emotions, acceptability, acceptability you have, and disagreement is there, and then tolerance is there. I mean, if we talk of this topic, it has so wide range that it needs a complete 3-day seminar